the most powerful thing that you can do, like human to human, is just like sit in the mud with that person and just honor the fact that their experience was really hard, and kind of give them space to talk about it.
Hello and welcome to Revolutionary Woman. My name is Tess Silverman. Women around the world are constantly creating ways to make a difference in their communities, and today's guest is no exception. Lorna Tallowin is the co-founder of Superdinky, a UK-based brand creating thoughtfully designed clothing and meaningful products for premature and NICU families. The business was born from Lorna's own experience as a mom after her son arrived at just 31 weeks, and she saw firsthand how isolating and overwhelming neonatal care can be. With a background in both fashion and the charity sector, Lorna partnered with her friend, a neonatal nurse, to build Superdinky into a mission-led business that supports families emotionally as well as practically. From preemie vests to NICU-proud clothing, Superdinky exists to create moments of comfort and connection during an incredibly hard time. Today, Superdinky is also tackling the long-term impact of neonatal care. Around 40% of NICU families experience symptoms of PTSD, and in response, the Superdinky Foundation has been established. The foundation will deliver projects focused on both the reduction of and the treatment of PTSD in both creative and evidence-based ways. Through this work, Lorna is mobilizing people who have been affected by PTSD to be part of the solution and to show that business can be a force for good. Hi, Lorna. Welcome to Revolutionary Woman. How are you today?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I'm really good. Excited to be here.
Thank you so much for stopping by. I am so excited as well. Okay, let's get started. So you grew up in Stilton, a little village in England. What was that like growing up in Stilton?
It was just lovely. I'm one of those very rare people who had a kind of idyllic childhood. I lived in a little village. My mum and dad were still together. My mum's a teacher. My dad's a town planner. So it was just, I have two brothers. It was just a very kind of, I would say normal for me, I guess, childhood. But I was always very creative. Yeah, I guess my house was always a very creative place to be.
That's so cool. So were your parents creative as well? I mean, I know as a teacher and your dad was a town planner, but were they into creative pursuits as well?
I think it probably came from my mum. She was always kind of pushing me. I think if she had grown up in a different time, she might have followed a creative pursuit as a career rather than teaching. So when I kind of took an interest in clothing, and she actually taught me to make clothes from when I was very, very young. She used to have a cupboard. A cupboard just off the living room where she'd disappear and there was just a sewing machine and fabric in there. And I just thought that was absolutely magical. So I was helping her from a very young age.
Oh my goodness. Did she make clothes for you as well?
Yeah, she made really beautiful clothes. And I think part of it was kind of, it was much cheaper then to make clothes by fabric than it is perhaps now. But yeah, she was always so crafty and always making clothes for me. And then I kind of followed in her footsteps and was, I'd disappear into this little magic tiny cupboard and come out with an outfit to wear for that day.
That's so cool. Okay, so I read that from a young age, you were already passionate about social justice. Were your parents as concerned as you were with social justice?
I think they have always brought me up to be, myself and my brothers, to be kind of globally aware. So they never kind of sheltered us from the reality of lots of different kind of environmental and social justice things happening around the world, and to feel kind of a deep empathy with people who have circumstances different to yourselves. So I guess they weren't so much into the kind of social activism side, but I think they definitely had that like deep rooted feeling that they wanted every human to have the best possible chance at life and health and happiness. And so I think that was kind of ingrained in me from quite a young age.
So Lorna, you decided to study fashion design in Nottingham and wanted to weave ethics into it. And your final university collection was an organic cotton. And then you designed an organic cotton range stocked at Harrods and Barney's, but something happened that made you reevaluate being a designer. Can you share that story with me?
Yeah, of course. I absolutely love being creative, and fashion design. To work as a fashion designer just felt like, an absolute dream come true. So I look back on those years with like real gratitude. And being kind of part of that world was wonderful. But I always felt like I was kind of pushing the people I was working for, or the heads of the collections, when I was kind of lower down, to make it more sustainable, make it more organic, and just really trying to push against what felt like sometimes quite a closed door because of, pricing and costs. And then I gradually, I moved to a few different organizations and was still kind of pushing this fair trade and organic, I guess, agenda for myself wherever I could. And then I was working as a women's wear designer for a streetwear brand. And we got bought by a bigger organization, and they moved all of our production from factories we'd worked with for many, many years and audited to other factories that I had not I didn't have visibility of the supply chain in the same way as I had before. And then there was this big factory collapse of a factory called Rana Plaza. And it was absolutely devastating. Over 1,000 women were killed in this industrial disaster. And it was because the factory had been audited for working conditions, but the actual building was structurally unsound.
Oh, geez.
And I remember seeing it on the news when I was sat in that office and just thinking, it doesn't matter how much I try and push these organic and fair trade, and, if things like this are happening close to where we're working. But I just decided then that I wanted to be part of the side of history that is pushing for change in a more significant way than trying to kind of bring about change from within being a fashion designer.
Okay. So from ethical fashion, you decided to transition into international development and became a global program manager for the World Association of Girl Guides and Girl Scouts. What was your role as a program manager?
Oh, that was amazing. So I worked the Girl Guides is the largest organization for women and girls voluntary worldwide. So it's a phenomenal movement across, I think it's 145 countries.
Oh, wow.
And I was it stretches far beyond and is so pivotal in so many people's lives, far beyond what I think the average person thinks of when they think of their own country's Girl Guide movement. And I was very privileged to be part of a team in London in the head office who were kind of responsible for supporting each of the country member organizations to deliver projects that transcended the borders of all the different regions. So one of those was, we had a big project with body confidence. So it was enabling girls to understand the body myth, and why people feel the need to kind of try and look a certain way, and kind of really unpacking that, and then having greater body confidence. So that's the first role that I kind of stepped into, was program managing the rollout of that, or the maintained rollout of that. But I got to work on some fantastic things. We took menstrual hygiene. We developed an activity pack for menstrual hygiene. And then basically we put that out to all of our members to see who would be interested in kind of accessing it. And that was really picked up by the member organizations in the Africa region. So I was kind of managing the rollout of that when I was pregnant and had my eldest little boy. But it was an amazing, amazing organization. They do such incredible work with women to curating leadership opportunities for girls in their communities. Yeah, phenomenal work.
Oh my goodness, that sounds amazing. Okay, so Lorna, you are the co-founder of Superdinky, a baby clothing brand. Can you tell me what Superdinky is about and what prompted you to start it?
Yeah, so Superdinky, we make teeny tiny baby clothes from organic cotton. We make them in the UK. They're all bright, beautiful, joyful prints that kind of bring a moment to joy to families who are having a baby living in the neonatal intensive care unit. So when I was pregnant, I was 7 months pregnant and kind of blissfully unaware that this kind of world existed until my waters broke and I kind of rushed to hospital. I'd been moving house that day, so we went in the removal van. It was quite dramatic, but my son was born 24 hours later.
Wow.
And whisked off immediately. I didn't touch him. I didn't really see him. He was wrapped in a plastic bag to conserve his heat. And he was just kind of whisked away from me immediately to be taken care of by the incredible staff we have in the UK, the NHS. But that the experience of having a baby in the neonatal intensive care unit is one that has deeply shaped me and my work and my future.
Wow. So why was it important for you to create these organic cotton vests for babies or clothing for babies?
I think because, firstly, I should say that a neonatal nurse was looking after me when my baby was in the NICU. Her name was Beth. And she had this idea. She'd looked after babies for 12 years in different hospitals across the UK. And she just thought that the joy was lacking and that the quality and how soft the garments are and how well they fasten and how quickly they can be taken off in a medical emergency, like just the kind of very medical functionality of it, but also the real human design element was kind of missing from what was available. So she approached me a year after my baby had graduated. We stayed in touch, became friends. And she contacted me and said, look, I had this idea. I want to call it Superdinky. It's what I want to do and I need some help. Will you do it with me? And I immediately was like, yes, I see the need, but it has to be organic and sustainable. And she was completely on board with that. Wow. So that's really where it started. But it's the real emotional thing of when you are pregnant, you think you have all this time until month 9 and you want to do the NCT classes to kind of meet other people who are pregnant and learn about birth. And then you imagine, or at least I did, this golden hour where your baby's born and there's this huge relief that they're here and they're healthy and you get to hug them and feed them and have them on your chest. And so many of those very, very pure and special first moments they just can't happen if your baby is very poorly or very early. So I think all of the things that parents lack of those first moments and first steps of becoming a parent are really kind of, I say, taken away from you because that's how it felt to me at the time. So actually being able to dress your own baby in something beautiful that you've chosen and being able to kind of have that moment where you're like, oh, this is my baby and I am a mom and I can, there is a future where I am the mom and I don't hopefully need all of this medical support around me.
Yeah. I actually am a NICU mom. My daughter was born 7 months, at 7 months. So I was bedridden from, 4 months on until my water broke and then I had to deliver her. And she was in a NICU for a week. And I'm remembering how it felt. Not being able to see her every day, not being able to hold her for as much as I wanted. And oh my goodness, I would have loved to have, that vest, the Superdinky vest, if it was invented then, because that would have been so much easier for my husband and I were trying to figure out how to clothe her and how do you put this on, so as new parents, we didn't know what we were doing. And I felt like I had no control over how I could care for my baby. So I thought this was such an amazing thing that you've done because it's giving parents that experience to be able to dress your baby in something that's super soft, and you said joyful with your beautiful colors that you have. I looked on your site, and it makes a huge difference. So I just had to tell you that because I was just remembering, oh my gosh.
Thank you for sharing. It's such a hard thing to explain until you've been through it, but I really feel like a kinship with you and with all of the parents who've been through the NICU. I feel like we understand each other and that real raw life experience that ties us in a way that it's hard to kind of explain just how impactful those moments are for you.
Yeah. So, and another thing that I read that you actually wrote about was that I read that about 40% of NICU parents develop PTSD. And I can remember one instance where I was like, I didn't know what was going on with me. I was like in a rocking chair holding my baby, and I'm trying to hopefully get her to nap. And she just wouldn't stop crying, and I was crying, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I do think that I had postnatal depression, but I didn't realize what it was. And I didn't know who to talk to about it. So why do you think it's not known that NICU parents experience PTSD or postnatal depression?
Gosh, that is such a good question. But firstly, I'm so sorry that you experienced it yourself. Like, it's so hard when you're in it and you just don't understand how you're feeling or that there's a name for it. And I do think there's like a lot of what I try to do is share awareness. And I just think there's real power in people going through it, knowing that actually that this is like an appropriate response for your body's nervous system, in that we're just like really overwhelmed. And that, 40% of parents have PTSD symptoms. But what's really interesting about that is that's like a low estimate, that 28%, this is across the UK, 28% are diagnosed. And that rate is, it's astronomical. So it should be something that we're talking about, but it also should be something where there's a clear pathway after neonatal care in every country in the world. So we need, my view is that 40% is completely unacceptable. And I'm very like black and white about some things. And I'm like, no, that's wrong. Like we shouldn't be leaving these families. And I personally experienced it in that I was discharged with my son. I actually don't share this story very often because I don't want to scare people who I support who are in the NICU now, but he had some breathing support for the 6 weeks that he was in hospital. And then the day before he was due to be discharged, he had like a moment where he forgot to breathe. So the alarms all sounded and everybody ran over and they put like a oxygen mask on him, and he revived very quickly. So I begged the doctor who said he was safe to be discharged the next day. I said, look, please could you just keep him a week, because this happened yesterday. And I had been waiting 6 weeks, praying and hoping for my baby to come home. And then at the final hour, I just felt really unsafe to take him home. And I think that's something that you kind of get like a little bit, I don't know if institutionalized is the right word, but you get used to having, I think perhaps people with much longer stints than mine might relate to this, is like you kind of get used to, you get to know the doctors and the nurses and all the medical names for everything and all of the tubes and wires that are supporting your child. So actually like you're desperate to go home, but when you do go home, all of that support, including counseling and psychological support, just tends to disappear. So suddenly you're kind of held in a bit of a medical bubble when you're in the hospital, and then you are discharged and suddenly it's you and your baby, and they won't stop crying and you don't know what to do, and your body's already been in a stress, an activated stress mode of nervous system regulation for days, weeks or months. So I just feel like it's a very it's almost like obvious that we're going to really struggle because of what we've been through, and the support just isn't there. And I had postnatal depression, I had postnatal anxiety, I was incredibly hypervigilant. A week after I got home, my son stopped breathing and I gave him CPR. So we were readmitted, and that just triggered all of these, like, can't just be a mum and put the NICU in the past, like I have to be his guardian angel and resuscitate him if needs be, so I can't leave him with anyone. So I had flashbacks and panic attacks, and I was really in like a very, very bad way with my mental health. And it took me several years. I mean, I don't share this for kind of empathy or pity, but I share this because I think people don't see what we're going through as NICU families. And I just really want to change the pathway for as many families as I possibly can, so that those families feel like held and they're connected to a community that kind of understands and goes, actually, it's really like valid that you feel terrified, or it's really valid that you feel guilt or like all of the feelings that you have, even if they're conflicting, are are valid after this really, really tough experience.
Yeah. Oh, Lorna. Oh my gosh. I'm like sitting here like, oh my gosh, I don't know what I would have done, had I been in your situation. And granted, my daughter was only in for a week, but that was a terrifying week for me because I'm like, I don't understand. Why does she have to be in there? And she was actually one of the bigger NICU babies. Compared to the ones that were there for like maybe they were a pound or like, like little tiny beings. And I was like, oh my gosh, to like come home and then not know, yes, it was wonderful that for me, it was great that I got to rest. But at the same time, I never really like rested fully because I was concerned about, okay, when can I see her again? When will I be able to get her home? And it was, but I had no idea that was part of being in postnatal depression, because there was no name, or at least I wasn't told that, that's what I was feeling. And it's just mind-boggling to me. Okay, that is a term. Okay, that is something that I didn't know what was going on with me back then. So thank you for sharing your story. I really think that your sharing your story will resonate with so many.
I was just going to say on the PTSD thing, like I think there's this like really strong connection between the military and PTSD. So I told somebody I thought that I might have a touch of PTSD because I was getting these like flashbacks and panic attacks, which I'd never experienced in my life before. And it was met with kind of a disbelief because of the connotation, I think, with the military and that like, but if you actually think about it, like people in the military who go into like very extreme stressful environments and are there day after day after day, it's like it's the compounding stress very often. So it's not like a one-off. It can be a one-off event, but it can also be triggered by compounding stress day after day after day, which if you're a parent in the NICU, you've got this like, it's not just a tiny baby. It's like your baby might be on breathing support or, like there's infection risk and there's all sorts of things and they're having brain scans to see whether they're brain damaged. And like there's all sorts of things that happen to you like every single day within the NICU, which cause elevated stress for a continued period of time. And then there's the hormonal aspect of it in the after birth, you have this like huge adrenaline surge during birth in whatever way it takes place. And then you have this like the thing that usually follows is like a big rush of oxytocin when you have your baby on your chest. And that really like helps and encourages bonding. But when you don't have that and your baby is not with you, it can do funny things to your hormones, which put you in a more stressed state instead. So like, it's this ginormous hormonal state while you're in, one of the biggest transitions of your life in a very prolonged, stressed environment. So for me, like the more I've learned about it, I didn't know any of this at the time. I just felt completely overwhelmed and was crying all the time. But now I've kind of learned a bit through some amazing people in the NICU community about kind of all of these different interlinking things. I'm like, well, yes, obviously we get postnatal depression and obviously we need more support and things should change.
Right. Yeah. I mean, what I did have was my mother-in-law, who used to be a nurse. I believe she was also a neonatal nurse. So she knew what to do, and she really was amazing in helping us out, my husband and I. Had I not had that kind of support, I would be like, what planet am I on? What is this? It was just such a huge, overwhelming, because you have your hormones going on, and then you have this little tiny thing who is so dependent on you, and you're like, what if I do something wrong? And so many feelings. At the end of the day, I mean, she's fine, and she was fine, but back then I was just like, I had no clue what was going on. So I really appreciate you sharing your story and you letting people know this does exist for women, and this does exist for parents, and it's not just a one-off thing. This does happen. So I read that you also have something called Parcels of Hope. Can you tell me what that's about?
Yeah, so Parcels of Hope is something that came to me just when we were like about to launch our first few vests. I made the first 100 myself. The next 1,000 have been made by a wonderful seamstress in England.
Wow.
And we've just gradually grown and grown, but we started very, very small. Like we did our own website. And I was loading up all the products on the website, and I just had this moment of like, I wonder if anyone would gift one, to someone they've never met. So like a kind of pay it forward idea if I stumbled across the Superdinky website and I'd had a Premi like 2 years, 4 years, 5 years ago, if I couldn't buy one for my own child, but I would know how much that meant to like receive a first outfit and dress a baby in something, that's especially for them.
Right.
I just had this like, I don't know, a feeling that I should list it as a product. And then it's actually become a huge thing in its own right. So last year our community gifted nearly £8,000 worth of product to UK hospitals.
Wow.
So we were able to send to more than 40 hospitals.
Oh my gosh, that's wonderful.
And I actually met somebody yesterday because often, so I have relationships with the staff, and I send a little note in just saying, these are what we're gifting in this size and this color. And could you please gift them on to families who are having a particularly hard time or are low income or are struggling emotionally? And I don't always hear what happens, but sometimes I get stories back from the hospitals, and sometimes I get stories back from the people who've been the recipient of them. And I know that they've gone to, like one went to a baby that had no visitors. Another went to a baby that had been a refugee family that had arrived, got refugee status in the UK, and then she'd given birth prematurely. So just I find it really beautiful that people care enough about like gifting people this first moment that they give it to a stranger. And it comes with, you can write like a little note, and the notes always make me cry because they're just, if you've been a NICU mom in the ward and then you share your experience, and it's like, I think it's healing in some ways for the people who are gifting them as well as the people who are receiving them. But I actually had a really beautiful experience yesterday where I was just, I actually went to meet our seamstress to pick up some more. And I was stopped for petrol, and a woman knocked on my the door of my car, and I was sat in the driver's seat, so she was kind of across the passenger seat at the side, and she'd seen on my car there's a sticker that just says like Superdinky special vest for tiny babies. And she just thrust some money. She knocked, I rolled my window down, and she thrust some money across to me and said, "Is this enough? I want to send one for a baby. Like, is this enough?" And I was so moved and kind of stunned. And I was like, I was just like, yes, of course I can do that. Like, and she started to explain that she had a 26-week baby, and that she had received one of our parcels, and that's how she'd seen who I was, because she'd recognized the sticker. And she was kind of shaking and on the verge of tears. So I wanted to give her a hug, but I was sat across from her in my car. And it was a very brief interaction, but it just showed me, like, I don't always know where they go. But like the fact that she had received one for her very, very, a really, probably at 26 weeks, they're the size of your hand or, 1.5 pound. And presumably had quite a long or difficult stay. I don't know the circumstances, but I know that she was really like moved and emotional about paying it forward, which was just, really beautiful.
That is so beautiful. What a beautiful way to let NICU parents, know that they're being supported. Oh my gosh, I love that story. To think that, that little sticker in your car, and it just so happened that this woman had gone through, what she did, and then to say, okay, now that I had this experience, I'd like to be able to give, something beautiful for another family. That is just amazing. I love it. Okay, so
I think often we feel like we're not doing enough. People who like feel injustices maybe deeply. Like I always feel like I want to do more to help people. I'm just building a foundation that runs alongside the Superdinky business, because the idea has always been from the start is that the more kind of vests we sell to individuals to dress their babies, and, you know, toddler t-shirts and Premi Power hoodies for mums and things, that we'll get to a point where we're able to put the money across to a foundation and then fund some incredible projects that reduce the PTSD. So I've collaborated with, I've got a number of kind of delivery partners for the foundation who would offer EMDR therapy support, like group circles, like individual counseling. So I'm really trying to like build up the I guess it's essentially like a business for good model, in that the more Premi baby clothes I can sell to the people who can afford them, the more we can gift to the people who can't afford them, and the more ongoing support that we can offer to people after NICU. And the aim is for that to be free, but these things take time to build. So I tend to be frustrated at, you know, I want progress now, but then having that moment yesterday where she just felt so emotional about being able to pay it forward. It's just like a reminder to me that like every single baby like that receives one, it's a really big thing. Like it's a really beautiful thing, the parcels of hope.
Oh, I love that. Okay, so Lorna, who would you credit for where you are now?
I think the whole idea for Superdinky was Beth, who was my neonatal, or one of my neonatal nurses in the UK for looking after my baby. So really, like she gets all credit. It was her idea, and very sadly, she has had some significant health problems. So she's kind of had to step away from things. But every decision I make, I think, oh, like, you know, is this what Beth would do, and is this the right, you know, how can I honor Beth in this decision? And she very sadly, her son died when he was 2, and a lot of the work that we do is kind of in honor of Tom. And like we have a little octopus as our logo, and he's called Tom Octopus in honor of her little boy. So yeah, she's everything to Superdinky, and it wouldn't exist without her.
Okay. So what's next for you? And, you know, what are your personal goals?
My personal goals are very tied up with my business goals, in that I really am a person who has always wanted to improve things in the small area of the world that I can, you know, and if I can make a dent in the 40% of parents who experience PTSD, then I really feel like that's worth spending a lot of my life doing. Yeah. So I'm chipping away at that in all of the different creative, innovative, just like in any way and shape I can, and evolving with the business and with the foundation, but just always keeping that at the heart of it, that like, how can we support those families who are just completely, you know, emotionally unsupported and going through this really hard time.
And would those be the same goals for the community you're involved with?
I think so, but I think one of the really beautiful things that I've seen in the NICU community, as I've been kind of part of it over the last few years, is that there's so many people who are touched by this and go on to start a charity, or to set up hospital donations, or to knit octopuses, or for their NICU. But like it seems like a very, it seems like a very like it touches people, and their experience is so raw that they just really feel called to do something. Yeah. So I think there's like a whole kind of sea of change makers who are trying to improve like maternity and also NICU. And I think a lot of future collaboration would be incredible, just if we're all pushing in the same direction. Yeah. There's talk of a kind of NICU coalition to try and bring more voices together and make it more powerful than our individual strands. I think just every act of kindness matters, and every act of kindness ripples. I'm part of interesting kind of thing. There's a a social experiment that's happening at the moment called Drop Dead Generous. And they're giving away $500,000 to 1,000 people who are doing something kind. And as part of that, I applied and got a grant to do some communication cards for families whose English is not their first language in the UK.
Wow.
So because I cannot imagine having a very poorly baby that is desperately wanted and loved, and the baby being so poorly and you not being able to understand what people are telling you.
Right.
So So I'm trying to do something around that. But one of the big things that they're looking at is, what happens when people act with generosity, and how far do the ripples spread? And if you tell people that you have done something generous, does it inspire other people to be generous? So that's something I'm really interested in, exploring about, like, how we can use the, if we're doing kindness in our tiny areas of the world, how can we use that to encourage and share this like attitude of kind of generosity?
I love that. What a great initiative. I think it's, because it's already with Superdinky, the amount of people that you've inspired to actually pay it forward. I mean, the fact that you're, trying to get this up and going and working with foundations, I think is incredible. I think that's so cool. And this new initiative of these communication cards. That's amazing. That makes such a huge difference. Oh my gosh, I love that. So if anyone wanted to know more about you and Superdinky, how would they go about it?
Well, we have the website. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm Lorna Tallowin, or the website is superdinky.co.uk. Okay. And the Parcels of Hope is listed if anybody would like to join in the Parcels of Hope. But genuinely, just any support you can offer to anyone going through a NICU experience. And sometimes that support can be very, very simple in that the words you use matter. And a lot of people say, oh, they're home now, so everything's fine. Or, oh, you were so lucky that they're home. Or at least you can, I don't know, at least this or at least that, and actually, like, a lot of that conversation kind of minimizes the experience that the parents have been through, or the siblings, or the wider family.
Right.
And actually, I just think the most powerful thing that you can do, like human to human, is just like sit in the mud with that person and just honor the fact that their experience was really hard, and kind of give them space to talk about it. And how was that for you when you were in the hospital? And I don't think it matters how long ago. Like, I know your daughter was 27 years ago, but actually, like, a friend asking you, how was that for you, and do you want to talk about it? It kind of might unlock things that you've never processed that actually would benefit you, as on just like a very human to human level. So I would say, like, if we can inspire, support Superdinky, buy a Parcel of Hope if you can. But on the wider thing is on a very like human to human level, I just think we need to acknowledge and like discuss this more and support the families who've been through it in a real, like, not trying to fix it way, but just being their way.
Yeah, I love that. So if you had one thing to change that you wish you had done years ago, what would it be?
Oh, that's a tricky one. I feel like you've put me on the spot there. I guess from my what I've learned over the years is to give myself more grace. Like, I felt like it was my fault that my body had failed him, and I think I really like internalized self-blame. And I think it's taken me a long time, but I've kind of learned that the antidote to that is compassion, like being really like actively kind to yourself in the moments where you're feeling the lowest, and kind of treating yourself like you would a very close dear friend going through a hard time. So I think give myself a bit more grace a bit sooner.
Okay. And my last question is, if you could go back in time, what advice would you give your younger self?
I think just always follow your heart and where you feel called to take it. And that sometimes that won't always make sense. But like my background, I kind of jumped around a little bit in that I was doing the fashion design and the organics, and then I was doing the international development stuff in charities, and then I was with the Girl Guides, and that was very community and volunteer led. And I think now that I am doing Superdinky, that kind of unites all of those experiences in that it's a community led brand trying to make a difference, trying to encourage other people to do the same, and it's using my skills from my design career. So I guess it's just trusting that your path will emerge, I guess.
Yeah. Well, Lorna, thank you so much for sharing your stories with me and with my listeners. And I love that the concept of Superdinky, it has blossomed into giving hope to parents, right? And giving them a chance to say, okay, we may not be able to have our baby with us right now, but having something that can make them feel like they're included, right, by these NICU vests, I think makes a huge difference. And I love that you are already creating initiatives that is really not just for NICU, but also for like other families who are being affected. I think what you're doing is so awesome. And I so appreciate that you're doing all of this to make sure that parents who are going through what you went through, what I went through, can say, okay, all right, this is something that we have to go through, but, at the end of the day, we'll be able to, be with our baby. Thank you for that. And I appreciate. And
thank you. And I think
and
it's
parcels of hope. I love that. Okay.
Thank you so much for hearing my story. I think it's just worth adding that, not every NICU family gets to take their baby home. And so part of what we're trying to do is create moments of joy right there in the NICU where you dress your own baby, and kind of take it away from the, you can have the joy when your baby's home. Right. But it's making sure that people are able to feel that moment of joy of dressing their baby, no matter how tiny or how poorly or whatever the outcome for that family is, because, heartbreakingly, not all babies come home.
Right. You're right.
But yeah, it's just really having, if we can support people to have that moment and also to feel connected to a community that holds them in that space, that's really, really what we're about. So thank you so much for your kind words and for listening to my story.
Oh my gosh, yes. And thank you for clarifying that. Yes, and you're right. It's not every baby, unfortunately, gets to go home, or it takes a lot longer for them to get home. But the moments of joy, I love that. Their moment of joy is being able to, be with their baby and dress them in this, in these clothing. So thank you. I appreciate that. Well, okay. So with that, I will catch up with you soon. Have a good day. Take it easy.
Thank you so much.
That's our show for today. I've posted more information about Lorna Tallowin on RevWoman.com. Thank you for listening, and I hope you'll tune in every other Thursday for another episode of Revolutionary Woman. You can listen to Revolutionary Woman on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. Just a little note. I've launched a Patreon account to support the show. All proceeds will go to producing and editing the episodes to give my poor husband a break from being my personal IT and production department. He wrote this. The address is patreon.com/RevWoman.